Congratulations on your Hi James, congratulations on your debut film First Light.
Thank you.
First of all, may I know where you are right now?
Yes, I'm in Geneva.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Can
only
you please
7:30
talk
p.m. It's a
about
good time.
can you please talk about the genesis of this project and why is this a passion project for you?
Yeah, this film I started writing in the wake of the religious discrimination bill, which was a bill that they were discussing in Parliament in Australia. And the bill was essentially a conservative bill that was being introduced to essentially give religious institutions the right to legally discriminate against like certain orientations and genders and different people that they disagreed with. Um, it was a passion project for me, as someone who was raised very Catholic, and has been on this journey through my Catholicism, from being someone who was born and like practiced Catholicism in a very devout way, into someone who started questioning it, and then ultimately was someone who was pushing against it. But then have now ended up in this like kind place with my own relationship with God, where my relationship is much more grounded in spirituality and kindness and less so in the institutions that can co-opt religion for their own political gain.
Yeah, there are a lot of themes that are very relevant right now, especially also in the Philippines with the
Yeah.
corruption that's going on right now. Can you talk more about that?
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult to consider like the Philippines and its relationship to politics and religion, without viewing it through a decolonial lens and like an anti-capitalist lens as well. I think that there are so many ways in the Philippines, and not just in the Philippines, but in so many countries around the world that are trying to untangle from the claws of colonization, where religion is being used as this way to kind of push people in a particular political direction, which is can be quite conservative. But I think when you get to the heart of things, and when you actually get to the Philippines and you spend time with nuns and you spend time out in the mountains with the people who are actually practicing this, you see that it's a lot less tied to like the actual dogma of like the Catholic Church, and a lot more tied to taking care of people in communities and feeding people. And that's kind of what I wanted the film to reflect is that yes, there is this narrative around corruption, but at the end of the day, the heart and like the heart of the film itself of this character, Sister Yolanda, is actually just kindness and goodness. And I think that that's what is at the core of what it means to be Filipino, and also what's at the core of modern day landscape of the Philippines. And so yeah, I think that's ultimately where it lands, is that there is so much negativity around it, and so many ways that it can be co-opted, but at its heart, when you really do return to the Filipino people and the people who are practicing Catholicism in this massive way, it's just kindness and it's grace.
You mentioned the nuns and the Philippines, and you know Ruby Ruiz is one of your cast members. Talk about the casting because she told me that you found her on Instagram. So
Yeah.
so talk
Yeah.
about how you found the other cast members like Maricel Soriano, Soliman Cruz, Res Cortez, and the legendary Kidlat Tahimik.
Yeah, I mean, we were very lucky with our casting process. We had an incredible casting director, Julie Isler. And it started off with Ruby as the core. I wanted to find someone who kind of like encapsulated this like grace and kindness. And there was something about Ruby that I could tell even from Instagram and watching her films online, that she kind of just embodied this grace that I was looking for. And then when it came to casting the rest of the team, it was really just trying to find people who I feel like could bring something to the characters rather than for the characters to be brought towards them, if that makes sense. So someone like Maricel Soriano, who's a good friend of our lead, Ruby Ruiz, and of course I've grown up watching her on my mother's TV. It was such an honor to be able to work with her, and for her to give us the time of her time for the project. And then naturally from there, once we had Maricel and Ruby with that kind of cast, and to have the an Australian team of producers and Filipino team, it was just a beautiful group of people who slowly were coming to us, that we were meeting in very organic ways. And yeah, it kind of became this perfect point because I think in the casting process, there was a lot less talking about what the characters were going to be like, but instead talking about our views on Catholicism, and all of us have different views. And I think that's what made the film so complex, is that all these different actors are bringing their own relationship to Catholicism to the film.
Hmm. You mentioned your mother, and she's from the Philippines. Can you mention her name? And do you know
Yeah.
what province she's from?
Yes, yeah, my mother's name's Sheila Robinson, but Sheila was born Domingo Estrada. And yes, born in Quezon City around the Frisco Markets area.
Yeah. Can you tell me how she influenced you into the person that you are today?
Yeah, I mean, I think my mum, as so many people can probably say, is like the number one influence on me on who I am as a person. My mum came to Australia in the 70s when she was about 16 years old, and so she moved in the middle of high school. And I think that really like shapes who she is today and her approach to being Australian. My mum is just one of the kindest people that you'll ever meet. She very much raised us in Catholicism. But also is someone who is very social, very funny, and very much likes to keep up to date with her movies and her TV. So she inspired me, I guess, not in just being a kind person, which she very much is, as well as a lot of her family members, but also very much culturally. She's inspired me in the kind of films that I watch, the music I listened to growing up, and yeah, I think everything I do is for my mother, like so many artists.
And how is it growing up in a multicultural household?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a hard thing to mix, to be honest, to be Australian in some ways and Filipino in other ways. Because so many of the core ways that I was raised were Filipino and so many of the core ways were also Australian. And sometimes those things don't really mix. But there is a point where the Australian culture and the Filipino culture really do intersect. And I think with making this film, bringing together Australian teams and Filipino teams was kind of the perfect thing for me because I understand at what points those things can intersect and like are really universal, and at what other points there are going to be disagreements. And so to create this film where I'm bringing together these teams, it was just kind of this like outward external reflection of what it means for myself to bring those two things together.
Mhm. Has your mom seen the movie already?
Yeah, she has.
And what was her reaction?
Yeah, she loved it. I mean, she loved to be able to see Maricel Soriano there. I think she was very impressed at like the what I was trying to do. I think for a lot of people, they have an impression of what a director's first film is going to look like, especially something that they wrote in their 20s. But I was really trying to aim for something that is much more inspired by the level of mastery and filmmakers that I admire. And so that's why there are a lot of important themes in it for me. But yeah, I think she was a bit surprised at what I was trying to go for, and also just really happy that I got to work with someone like Maricel.
Hmm. And the cinematography of this film is really great. Can you tell me about where you filmed the movie and how did you decide on having this kind of cinematography and the slow pacing of the.
Yeah. Um, I'm inspired a lot by a lot of like great filmmakers, especially from different parts of Asia, in Taiwan especially, and there is a pacing and a slowness to the cinema, which I think has really influenced my work. But most of all, what I find impressive about their films is that they're not ever trying to force you too much into what to think. They present a scene for you in this wide way where you're able to kind of look at everything within a frame and almost kind of follow your own thoughts and your own rhythm in response to what's happening on screen. And so I think that inspired a lot of the cinematography behind that. But most of all, it was really working with my cinematographer, Amy Della. We've been working together since I was in university, and we kind of just have this like shared understanding of what we're trying to do. I think ultimately what we want to do with this film is because there is so much going on in the story and in the themes, as much as possible, we wanted the camera work to remain reserved and very, very intentional. Anytime we were going to push in or anytime we were going to move the camera had to serve a purpose. We couldn't kind of just be following this basic template of how to make a film. So yeah, I think that's what inspired a lot of the filmmaking, and a lot of it is really just giving the performers the chance to perform. When you're trying to cut too much and you've got too many angles, and my actors have to do it again and again and again. Instead, we're keeping things wide, and a lot of my actors have theater background, so it required them to do things in single takes, which was really really fun to work with.
Mhm. What exactly places did you go to in the Philippines, and how challenging was it filming also in the Philippines?
Yeah, so we shot a lot in around Morong in the Rizal area, and we also shot up north in La Union. And I mean, it was beautiful being able to shoot and work in both those locations, just because people are so excited about the idea of a project being filmed there. People are really welcoming, like they want you there. I've worked a lot as a photographer all across, France and the USA and America and um, Australia and in all these different places. Sometimes people are hesitant about you being there and filming. I think for us, shooting in the Philippines was just received with so much warmth. Everyone was so excited about us being there. Everyone wanted to be involved and be part of the project, which was a lot of fun. So we found lots of different ways for different family members to become involved, all across the different departments. Shooting in the Philippines ultimately was just an incredible experience for me personally because it gave me an excuse to return to my mother country and spend an actual extended period there and be able to work there rather than just always be there visiting family or being a tourist. So to be able to work there was really beautiful for me. But I think ultimately for a lot of Australians working on the project, they were just so excited about the idea of working on a film where we're trying to like understand each other's cultures. So it naturally became this beautiful gelling of each other's like strengths and interests.
Mm. Did the Filipinos feed you a lot of Filipino food? Like what kind of food did they bring you?
Oh yeah, we had lots of food all the time. We constantly joked that we were never hungry for a single second of the entire months that we were there. I think my favorite part though was when we're out in those provinces, having that fresh pan de sal every morning was just the smell, and I forget what it is that they like sprinkle on it, but it's just so tasty. But then also we had lots of lechon all the time. And my personal favorite is puto. So just having constant puto. I mean, I put on a lot of kilos while I was there in the best possible way.
Yeah. So have you ever met Lav Diaz, the filmmaker who's very well known in the Philippines for this slow cinema?
I've never met Lav, but I'm so inspired and I think my work is always trying to attain this level of just like spirituality and thoughtfulness that Lav Diaz's work is. I would one day love to be able to be operating at that kind of level, but he's a major inspiration for me. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a chance to film another movie in the Philippines, what project would you think of to do next?
Yeah, I do have another project coming up that is half set in the Philippines and half set in another country. I think I'll always be coming back to the Philippines. It's so, of like as much as I try and write other stories and I have written other stories set in other countries, there is something that always brings me back to the Philippines when I'm writing. And I think it's impossible for me as a writer trying to write original stories without being influenced by the fact that so much of the way that I was raised has been Filipino and always brings me back to the country and its themes and its thoughts and its people.
Mhm. How was the reception of the movie in Melbourne?
Yeah, it was incredible. We had our world premiere in Melbourne and it was just so, I mean, it's the city that I grew up in, so many of my friends and family were there. It was so special to be able to have a world premiere that my family was able to be at. I think it's just one of the best experiences of my life, and the response in Melbourne in particular has been really incredible. I think in Australia there can sometimes be um, a general kind of means to be a bit risk averse when it comes to filmmaking. And so for us to go in and create this film and to say from the very beginning, we want to shoot in the Philippines, I'm going to film it in Tagalog, I'm going to have a full Filipino cast, we're already kind of shaking up a lot of different things. But ultimately, for everyone in Australia, it really seems that everyone really appreciates the fact that we were trying to do something different and try to push the Australian cinema and the way the industry works with funding into some new places.
Mhm. And for my last question, what was the most memorable part of making this movie?
The most memorable part of making this movie, I think for me, was from the very beginning, spending time in the mountains with some nuns around Baguio. Um, that for me was the most special experience because the story in this way that it follows my own personal experience. Every single character is kind of this different part of who I am and my relationship to Catholicism. When I actually went up to Baguio and was spending time in the mountains with a lot of these sisters, I think there was just this thing that I could never understand unless I was there. There's like a slowness to the way they live, and there's a philosophy, and there's a kindness. And I think being able to spend time there, and even beyond just the ways that it affected the script and the story, I think for me as a person, to spend time with these people, has changed me forever. I think for me that was definitely the most memorable part.
Wow. Congratulations, James. And I look forward to meeting you in person one of these
Thank
days.
you. Oh my God, we're figuring out when we're going to be there, but we'll be there in a couple months. And yeah, but you're in LA, is that right?
I am in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
also go to the Philippines a lot. So
Okay, good.
hopefully
Hopefully we'll
one
see
of
you
these
over
days.
there. Yeah.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much for your time.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.